and welcome again to the Skillwork Forum. As always, I'm Tim, joined with my partner Brett. Here on the Skillwork Forum, we gather to talk about really issues, trends, any emerging topics around skilled trades, and we tend to focus more in the manufacturing space. So today is no exception. We're going to have a special guest with us here today. I'll introduce Andy Camp in just a moment, but Andy is from a company, ES&E, which is Electric Supply and Equipment. It's a great company in North Carolina area on the eastern seaboard. They've been in business for almost 90 years, a great company. We really want to bring Andy today on to talk about this concept of upskilling and how do you leverage your workforce to be able to address some of the skilled trades gaps that many of you are suffering out here. So Andy, we want to say thank you for joining us here on the Skillwork Forum. Andy is let me make sure I get this right, Vice President of Automation and Solutions Services at ES&E, and great partner and friend of Skillwork. Maybe just tell us a little bit about your personal background, and we'll get into a little bit of this.
Yeah, you got the title right. It's a long one. Been in electric supply and equipment for a while. History and automation. So everything that we do is automation and electrical related. Yes, very proud NC State grad. More proud father of 3 little girls.
That's a full job. So then you have twins?
Yeah, twins and a newborn.
Give us a little bit of, appreciate the brief little background on yourself there, but maybe for the audience, give us a little more, understanding of ES&E and kind of what you guys do, the services you provide, and kind of then kind of the idea of upskilling and the whole industrial workforce. Pack as little or as much in that as you want.
So we've been around since 1935, historically as an electrical distributor, which meant something different in 1935 than it does in 2024. We are a Rockwell Automation distributor. Rockwell Automation is a large manufacturer of automation products in the U.S., probably the largest in North America. So we have shifted our focus primarily towards industrial manufacturers, and we've seen that huge shift in technology throughout those 89 years. The invention of the PLC in the 60s was a major change for our industry. That really kicked off a lot of the automation, and that was the golden standard for a long time. It's still in use in most of our manufacturers, but even that's changing quickly. The rate of change is what we're seeing the biggest change in lately, which is driving the need for upskilling.
Yeah, so that we talk about this fourth industrial revolution a lot. I know you're familiar with that term, Andy, and it's driving, technology. The drive towards technology is largely to try to answer the question of a diminishing pool of skilled trades guys that you used to be able to bring in. And so technology has been brought into play to try to respond to some of these. But the challenge is that there's a gap right now in the need for these guys with this higher end capability. So this shift towards industry focusing on upskilling, do you see that being more a push from industry itself or more a kind of a push from the skill workers, the guys out in the field desiring more of this information? What's driving it more?
There's a lot of factors all in play at the same time. So you have the technology change, but you also then have the change in the labor force and shifting towards younger workforce. So that talent is leaving the door a lot with the tribal knowledge that goes with it. But to your question, Tim, I actually think it's both. So the manufacturers want skilled laborers and laborers want a career. And I think that's driving a lot of personal growth. But more than either of those is the technology. And skill workers and skilled trade are responding to the demand from manufacturers.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so, from your perspective, Andy, you're out there, you're involved, you talk to, a lot of these clients, and you're very involved in this automation process. So, there's benefits, obviously, to both workers and employees for the upskilling. What do you see as probably the significant benefit? I mean, there's the obvious, I know, of, hey, we get more skilled workers, and maybe that's the answer. But, any thought on just the overall, maybe a little broader benefits?
I agree. There's 2 obvious benefits. For the worker, there's job security. Staying relevant is necessary to continue to be of value to your employer. For the employer, it's efficiency, it's uptime, it's qualified personnel to maintain the equipment. Those are the obvious ones. But I think closely behind, and maybe a better answer, is satisfaction on both sides. So I think that educated and trained workers are happier going to work every day. And I think that from the employer side, happy workers make for better products, better experience for the employer and for their customers.
Yeah, definitely a win-win all the way around. And we talk a lot about just the intrinsic value of people feeling, employees of every company, no matter what your job is, feeling like you're valued, you have some upward mobility, and particularly you mentioned the younger generation. We talk a lot about millennials, but really Gen Z now are the up and coming workforce, and they thrive on learning and growing and having a pathway towards getting somewhere greater. So I know your company, Andy, and our Skillwork, we recognize this demand and need for upskilling. As a matter of fact, we partner. When I mentioned that you're a partner of ours in that regard, we have actually are working together and have actually deployed a curriculum and a training for upskilling some of our technicians, and that's continuing to grow. But you talk a little bit about that partnership and how you've seen us develop that, and what does that look like for the future, for maybe using us as a model for your clients, this idea of creating these grassroots efforts to upskill employees.
Good question. So it started with a need. A lot of training now is very focused on a specific product, specific manufacturer, or maybe one specific skill. And there's a focus on the really high end or the really low end. And it's, again, very product centric. So what we built together was a training that was focused on skills, specifically troubleshooting related to a real experience that the trainees would see in the field. So it's focused on actual electrical systems. We used our specialists to develop the curriculum, the systems, the training based on what they see in the field, so that the skill workers that go through that class are very aware of a real scenario. They've troubleshot a real system. And since we've developed that together in partnership, we have seen a huge demand from our customers as well, more that we're limited by bandwidth rather than any sort of a sales. Traditionally, it would be about selling a training. For this, it's more about bandwidth. We have a lot of customers that are interested, so it's been a great thing for both of us.
Yeah, it has, and we've continued to expand that. And again, it doesn't solve everything, but I think maybe for those that listen to this, the idea of you creating with the right experts, even experts you have in-house, create this ability to take your higher end skilled guys, and basically that's what we're getting from you, Andy, some of your really leading technicians to help develop curriculum and scenarios to take our guys to a shortened, class, because again, Brett, we can't afford to have these guys go for 6 months.
Right.
We need them
Yeah.
on the floor. So, but a week, 10 days, something like that, create that. And, what's keeping a manufacturer out there from doing something like that themselves?
Well, I think you're right. I think that is the challenge. I think, Andy, you alluded to something a minute ago that I think so critical. We hear it all the time. I think you can tell me, but I'm guessing you hear the same thing. It's not just having the skills, but it's having the skills in this industrial environment that is so critical. And then to Tim's point is then how do you do that without sending them to a 2-year technical college or a 6-month program, and it kind of almost comes in modular bits and pieces, where it's a week here and then another week and this, that. I think GCAP, which is Garden City, the ammonia, for those that are in the food manufacturing space, what GCAP is. But it was kind of similar there. And Andy, I'm gonna ask you a question here in a second. So my background was in food manufacturing, facility, and so, but we would send guys there for a week up training to Cert 1, Cert 2, all this kind of thing. We still do it today in our company. But you couldn't send somebody there that didn't have some understanding of what we were sending them into. And I think it's similar. That's a bit of the solution on this upskilling, whether it's mechanical, electrical, further automation, is, taking that. So Andy, from your perspective, I don't know, there was maybe a couple questions in there, but I'm assuming you're seeing the same. We need them to have more skill. We want to upskill some of our own, some of the new ones that we're bringing in, but they need to kind of understand the environment, that they're going to live in, and then second, what do you see, from a standpoint of what they need to have some knowledge when we send somebody, into one of your, the classes that we've developed with you guys.
Yeah, that's what we've aimed for, is a bit of a sweet spot. Tim and Brett, you both mentioned this earlier. This is not a 2-year class. Where a 2-year class, you might start somebody from any background and get them to a certain point. We're intending to take people that have experience, they've seen it, they're fairly familiar with the industry, and we want to upskill them specifically on a set of skills. I think there are some of the things that typically would scare a skilled worker just purely based on familiarity, not based on ability, but they're not comfortable with them. And our idea in 1 week is, and it's a long week, it's a full week or it's a full 10 days, but as much as possible, touch a wide variety of products, increase familiarity with each one, and provide enough training. If there was an issue with this component, that the technician would feel comfortable, understand the equipment, and be able to diagnose the problem.
Is the skilled labor shortage hurting your company's bottom line? Skillwork is the premier staffing agency focusing exclusively on skilled labor. Our team of highly skilled workers augments your existing teams for elevated impact and decreased downtime. Partnering with hundreds of facilities in more than 30 states, we deploy our traveling industrial technicians to work for you on a contract basis. Our philosophy is simple: to honor God in all we do, bring respect back to the skilled trades, and positively impact those around us. For more information on how Skillwork can deliver the top labor talent you need, visit skillwork.com or call us at 402-447-7058. Call us today to see how Skillwork can work for you.
Speaking to industries out there, manufacturers, and you've probably had this conversation with some of your clients, Andy. Why would they want to invest in something like this? I mean, aren't you taking one of your crucial guys when you're already understaffed out of your facility? Why does it make sense to look at this as an investment?
Well, Tim, I would say it's a long-term game. It's actually pretty short. I understand how hard it is to lose people for a week. Again, we do the same when we dedicate resources for training. But our company policy, just looking at our own employees, is I would rather have invest and have skilled employees for the long run than worrying about 1 week when they're at training. Just our personal philosophy on it. I know it's difficult, but they're going to come back better. And I'm going to make up for that lost time quickly based on the training they just received.
That's great perspective. I mean, Brett, we talk a lot about, there's a short-term issue with filling the skilled trades gap specifically. You got to have people out on the floor. But if you're not paying attention to the mid and long term here, you're going to lose the game.
Yeah. Well, I think Andy alluded to it a little bit ago in that it creates happier employees, and happier employees tend to stay, and they produce, better quality product at the end of the day. And so, you've got to not make that investment. It's a bit of a crazy cycle, to don't invest in training them, don't invest in those kind of things. You lose them, it's just kind of a versus, we've got to look at this and tend to kind of figure we've got to make these investments and little by little. And you can look at this a little bit that way. Well, it's a little bit of training here, it's a little bit of training there. It's still not going to solve my whole problem. But if you don't do anything, then you're not making any progress. So I think you got to make a decision to get in.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, for sure.
Seems like you can't talk about anything right now with at least asking about, and I think here it actually is relevant, but the impact of AI. Obviously AI is all the buzz, and in the automation world, Andy, I'm sure you guys are a lot more on top of it than probably Tim and I are, but we're trying to get smarter and trying to understand it even in our business and how it affects what we do. But from a standpoint of AI and upscaling, do you think the increase of AI and maybe even how are you seeing it being utilized in the manufacturing? But is it going to increase the need for upskilling or decrease because AI is going to do everything and we won't need any people, or what?
Right now, I think it's too early. Bill Gates has a good quote that we overestimate the impact of technology in 2 years and underestimate it in 10 years. And I think that's exactly where AI is. When ChatGPT launched, everything was AI, AI, AI. We have products launched now that have AI in the name. So I'm not downplaying it because it will affect us. There are jobs that will be eliminated because of what AI is capable of doing. There are some jobs that will stay roughly the same. Everything else is going to be affected in some way or the other. So I think in general, it's going to change. Just like we talked about when the PLC was first introduced, that changed jobs. It eliminated some jobs. It required upskilling for the workers that still had jobs to remain relevant. The same thing is going to happen with AI. There are processes that will be replaced by artificial intelligence, but that's going to create new demand for other jobs that have to have an understanding of how the AI technology works and how to better work with it. I think that's the challenge. PLCs, we still manufacture. The US produces a great deal of output with a different number of resources, and the resources that are there just have to understand the equipment and how to work better with it. AI is the same.
Yeah. So, these topics on what we train our guys on, what you guys and your instructors train our folks on, and you mentioned we try to give them a broad perspective of things they need to do. But if we've been able to, and maybe you can talk a little bit, Andy, about how we've aligned our course, because there's so much to touch on. Having a roadmap and a structure really helps. So we've aligned our training that your team has developed with SACA, which is a certification organization that focuses on manufacturing certification. Could you talk a little bit about somebody out there maybe struggling with what do we do and how do we go after this, upskilling issue, and how we've kind of latched onto SACA?
Yeah, great question. And again, like we talked about earlier, training is not new. We've offered training for decades, but historically, training has been very manufacturer specific or focused on a specific technology. What companies like SACA have done is taken this complex change that's happening around Industry 4.0 and developed a roadmap, a curriculum in order to get there. So it's a set of guidelines that we actually build curriculum to meet, but it's a nice standardized certification process covering a wide range of technology and being fairly agnostic to the manufacturers. The trainees get a more holistic experience as opposed to learning one flavor of a product from one manufacturer. We're a Rockwell distributor, so there's always a bit of a spin for us. But with Rockwell having a dominant market share, it ends up being pretty relevant both ways. Right. And we touch a lot of things inside the course that are not related to Rockwell, that are more just common in the industry.
Yeah, I think that I'm trying to remember what the SACA acronym stands for. It slips my mind right now, but SACA, if those watching this want to look it up.
Smart Automation Certification Alliance.
There we go. Thank you. It really does give us a roadmap to follow. And so if you're listening out there and you're trying to figure out, all right, how do we tackle this thing? We encourage you to go take a look at that. At least it gives you a roadmap, and it gives you a way to, as Brett was alluding to, give your employees some sense of, we have a pathway for you to not only improve your capability, but your value and a destination we're going to with this upskilling. So we're big fans of that.
Yeah, for sure. You said something there, a minute ago, Andy, and I know we're probably getting close to the end here, and we just get clients that want these really must-have narrow specifics of they got to have this many years in this industry or this many years. And you said it a minute ago, and I think it's so key is what SACA is doing and what this training is doing. It's not fixated on a piece of equipment or on a particular, because the reality is it's broad. It's automation's automation. Whether you're making this product or that product is not really that relevant. But so many of these companies think there's something magical about we only want people that have worked in this industry. It's almost, I think, counterproductive.
Yeah,
I think
limiting.
I think because you limit, we've pulled individuals out of other industries and put it in, and suddenly they show up with an idea. Now, as long as they understand the industrial, fast-paced, breakdown kind of a world that they're living in, but anyhow, I just when you said that about, the training now is probably less focused on a particular item on that. So
kind of ask you as we close up here, Andy, any final thoughts, or what would you what would you want to leave our folks that may be listening on this, ideas about this concept of upskilling in the environment we're in now?
I think it's important for both sides to embrace it. And when I say both sides, I mean your end customers, manufacturers, and the employees. If you're trying to decide who's a good candidate for upskilling, Brett, somewhat to your point around what companies tend to focus on and think is important, a specific stereotype or a specific skill set. This is more of a mindset. You want employees that are willing to relearn. That's a really hard thing for a lot of people to do. Yeah. It doesn't mean forget all of your experience, but it does mean being willing to reconsider everything. One of the reasons that we do the training that we do is, yes, it's very practical. It's very hands-on. There is equipment, but there's concepts as well. We don't want people to only rely on experience. We want people to understand concepts and principles and practices that translate across any manufacturer, any product. There are guidelines for how to troubleshoot systems. There are general technology changes that we want our trainees to be aware of. So I think, Tim, to close it up, is to be looking for employees with that skill set. I think historically, we always focused on people of a certain type or kind or experience level. And I would throw that out the door a little bit and focus specifically on people that are willing to embrace the change.
That's great. Change is so crucial. And aptitude, I think, if I had to encapsulate that, do they have an aptitude for learning and, and a curiosity? So that's really crucial. And it's been great conversation, Andy. We appreciate you coming on board, and we appreciate you being a partner with us in this investment and journey we're on to upskill our technicians and hopefully open some eyes to some of the folks that may be listening to this today. So thank you very much for being on board. And for those of you that are tuning in to the Skillwork Forum today, we hope this conversation was helpful to you, made a positive impact, or added some value in your organization and your life. And remember, Skillwork, we really exist to connect outstanding workers, skill workers that have this kind of aptitude and desire to grow with companies like the ones Andy works with and others that need them. So if you find yourself in need, you want to reach out to us, we'd love to hook you up with what we do, or even great companies and partners like ES&E that Andy represents. So, and one more thing, if you enjoyed today's podcast or you find value in it, we hope you don't miss out on future episodes. And it really helps us a lot if you went out to Spotify or YouTube, wherever you look at this podcast, and just subscribe or like the show. It really helps us a lot and helps us get the word out to more. So until next time, God bless. Thanks for joining us.
This is Brett Elliott, CEO and co-founder at Skillwork. Prior to starting Skillwork, I spent over 30 years in the food manufacturing space. From literally starting out cleaning the restrooms to becoming the maintenance manager, then the plant manager, to eventually becoming the president and owner, I've seen the manufacturing world from many perspectives. And like many of you, I've seen firsthand the growing need for higher skilled workers, while at the same time experiencing the shortage of this skilled talent. I started Skillwork to address that need. I knew the headhunter and the local temp agency models were not the solution. If you're experiencing the same shortage of talent at your facility, we would love to connect you with our team. Give us a call at 402-447-7058 or visit us online at skillwork.com.